Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic night or just as good of a day. I appreciate all the love and support. I always do. And seeing all the comments and just the progression from where we were and where we're going, where we are now, it's beautiful and it makes me so happy. It really does. It's amazing that I'm in this position and I'm able to be here, not because of me, but because of you guys. And I'm really glad and I'm grateful that you guys, that everybody who is listening enjoys the type of content that I'm making. It means the world to me. And I hope that the content that you like now is the content that you will forever love. I hope you enjoy listening to these stories that I've read for you. A little bit of a backstory. I have never had a paranormal experience, so I've always erred on the side of skepticism. I just started to dog sit regularly and have stayed in 3 homes so far with no issues. I don't ever get scared on my own at night, and especially not when I have dogs with me. I also never have problems getting to sleep or staying asleep, even in places that are new to me. However, this stay was different from the jump. Typically, I get 8 to 10 hours, but the first night I only got, at most, 4. So far, I've always slept on the couch with a dim light on nearby, so I don't run into stuff if I have to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. I settle in around 9 p.m. this night because the dog I'm sitting is a puppy, and the owner told me that's when he gets sleepy. I put my headphones in and settle in to watch a few episodes of Misfits until I'm tired enough to turn in. The dog lays down to sleep on my legs. Everything is typical of every house sitting I've had so far. The only thing I'm not used to is this house has a walkway on the 2nd floor looking down into the room I'm sleeping in. I'm fine though. Like I said, I don't get scared. I go to sleep around midnight. The issues this night arose when the dog woke me several times, barking at nothing. Each time this would happen, I'd settle him again, blame it on him sleeping in a different area, not being used to it, and go back to sleep. It took longer each time, but I did it. Only, it got to the point that every time I was on the cusp of sleep, he'd bark or start growling. Finally, I managed to fall asleep probably around 3:30, only to wake up at 6:30 to the sound of voices talking, sounding like they were in the kitchen. My initial thought was it was the owners using the Furbo, which is like a baby monitor but for dogs, that's in there with the crate, because it sounded like it came from that area. That didn't make sense though, because the dog was with me, and it was 6:30 in the morning, so I called it an auditory hallucination from lack of sleep and moved on. He's a pretty big puppy, a Vizsla, 45 pounds at 6 months, so I'm thinking maybe he needs more space on the couch. I switched to the pull-out the second night. I also put the lights I dimmed in the kitchen to max, but it's the same shit. Go to sleep at 12:30, more on edge today. Start clocking noises that I wasn't paying attention to yesterday. Sometimes it sounds like shuffling on the carpet on the 2nd floor. Sometimes it's taps coming from the kitchen that I never hear during the day. I spend a significant amount of time squinting up at the darkened hallway. but I don't see anything. It just sort of feels like something's up there. Dog still barks sporadically, sometimes jerking awake because of it. I think I get like 3 hours. Wake up again at 6:30 to voices, but they're closer this time, sounding like they're in the same room. I'm like, okay, I definitely need more sleep if I'm having another auditory hallucination. So I drive home that day to nap for a few hours. I feel like I have to clarify at this point. Auditory hallucinations, when just waking up, are rare to me. I've had them maybe 5 times before this in my life that I can remember. So, as much as I'm trying to gloss over, it's weird. The third night, which was yesterday, I'm like, okay, it's probably just all in your head. Still, I keep the kitchen lights on max, and this time, I turn on the lights above the walkway. I get to sleep at 12:30, then I'm startled awake 2 hours later when the dog freaks out, starts barking and growling, facing towards the foyer. He then does something he never did before this, and runs into the foyer to see if something's there. I'm sitting there with my ears perked, my phone in one hand, wondering if I should call the police, but I don't hear anything, and he comes back 30 seconds later, standing on the pullout next to me and staring at the same place he was earlier. I am officially spooked at this point. I'm still hearing shit. I still feel like something's watching me. I start counting the taps in the kitchen, and it's always 3 sets of 3, which is comforting at first because I think it's an appliance. Except then I realize that I'm pretty sure that's a thing in supernatural shit and not a good thing. I get back to sleep at 5:30 a.m. This time, I'm not woken up at 6:30 by voices. Instead, at 7:30, a woman whispers my name directly into my ear, clear as fucking day. I don't know if it's significant or if this happens in auditory hallucinations as well, but this time, it's only audible in my exposed ear. Since I'm sleeping on my side, regardless, at this point I'm done. I feed the dog, let him out, put him in his cage, drive home, and sleep for 4 more hours. It's the 4th night now, and currently midnight while I write this. I'm still hearing shit around me even while I'm sitting here in the kitchen with a shit ton of lights turned on. Sometimes, I feel like I see things moving in my peripherals. Kind of feels like I'm going crazy, to be honest. So I just kind of wanted to vent here. Maybe someone could either assuage my fears or confirm them. I'll be up reading replies if I get any, since I don't plan on sleeping. I haven't had a lot of irrational fear in my life. I believe in ghosts and spirits, but I've never had first-hand encounters with them. I think most stories people tell aren't real, and I wonder if mine is. I don't know if it is, but I figured I would share some details. The first night I got here, I had to take a 5-hour flight, so I was pretty tired by the time I got home. When I got to the new house, I looked around for a little bit, called my dad. He told me which one was my room, and I came in and went to sleep. I woke up at like 3 a.m. with my door wide open and lights on all over the house. I was pretty sure I had turned on at least some of the lights, so I was kind of anxious, but I also figured it could have just been my mind making it up. I got up, turned off the hallway light, closed the door, and turned off the light in my room. I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't want to go all around the house because I'm a wuss. The next day, I had no problems. I bought a pizza and chilled out by the pool. I was loving living in this mini mansion by myself. A few more days went by, and one night, I was watching Moon Knight in my living room when I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up naturally at about 2 a.m. on the recliner chair. The lights were off this time, rather than on, and I knew I had left them on. I sat there for a moment, and then realized there was something moving in the kitchen. I watched in terror as I saw a bald man walking across the kitchen. He had an abnormally large head, almost like a light bulb, with his grinning smile. The room was illuminated only by the glass screen door to the right of the kitchen. He just started walking back and forth through my kitchen. My heart was pounding. My phone was dead because I fell asleep, and I just started holding my breath, holding myself completely still, doing the best to hold back my shivers. He kept walking back and forth, opening drawers. He did this for about 10 minutes until he looked over at me and then walked out of the house. When he left, I sprinted upstairs and looked outside, only to see nothing. I figured it was a dream. I went downstairs and checked the door. The automatic lock is good. There's no way anyone could have gotten in or out. At midnight, my passcode lock refuses entry, and you have to have the physical key to get in. I chalked it up to a hallucination and went to bed. The next night, I had been playing some video games online with a buddy of mine. We were having fun until I walked down at about 11 p.m., only to see the front door wide open. I had left earlier to go get some food, but I remembered closing it when I came home. I was unnerved by this, but still thought not a lot of it. I went to sleep at about 11 p.m. that night. I was sleeping normally until I woke up at 3 a.m. again to see the lights on outside of my room. I swore I had turned them off. I heard footsteps outside, walking up and down my hallway. I sat in horror once again, lying in my bed, trying not to make a noise. I had thought maybe someone had really gone into my house when I had left the door open. However, the lights turned off, and nobody left the house because I would have heard it out of the window. So, once again, I figured it was just my mind playing tricks on me. This brings us to the last night. Well, more like this morning. Last night I went out to get food again. When I left my house, I remember closing the door and turning the lock on. I heard the click, and I left. I ended up going to Five Guys, which, by the way, was way too expensive for not very good food. Anyway, when I got home, I was mortified to see the door was wide open. This time, I was highly scared. I snuck into my house, closed the door, and locked it. I went into my kitchen and grabbed one of those steak carving forks as a weapon and went through my house. I checked each room, turned on all of the lights, and made sure no one could get out. I called my dad. No good. He didn't pick up. He's in New York, so he was already asleep. I hung out and waited for a while and figured I was just crazy again. I went upstairs, and after an hour on my phone, I fell asleep. This morning, I woke up in a rush and saw the man standing in my doorway, staring at me, only to sprint away when I got up to chase him. I got up and grabbed the steak fork again and ran him down the hallway for there to be nothing at all. This is what prompted me to write this. I saw him in broad daylight and he responded to me, following him and threatening him. I figured he is not real. Something in my mind is making this up because I'm here alone. But has anyone had hallucinations like this? What do I do to stop having these? I'm a world traveler. I've been all over the globe in the past 2 years and stayed in all sorts of places, from old colonial homes to fancy new high-rises. I've been in Budapest for a week or so, and I'm living in an old building that has to be at least 200 years old. In order to access my unit, you have to take the main elevator to the 3rd floor and then walk up a derelict staircase to make it to the 5th floor. As soon as I walk up the stairs, you'll trigger a motion sensor that lights up the seldomly used floor I'm on. I felt this strange presence on this floor. I hear footsteps in the halls, and there is clearly nobody else living here besides me and a friend that's staying in the same unit. I hear my name being called by my friend, who at the time was out of the house. Another thing is, when I enter the bathroom, it almost seems and feels like someone is closing the door behind me, as the door doesn't close on its own unless I walk through it. The other night around 3 a.m., I had trouble sleeping, and I went onto what used to be a communal balcony, but it's now used solely by myself for a cigarette. And I heard someone frantically running up the stairs, footsteps heavy enough to indicate a man of some stature. The motion sensor triggered and the hallway lit up. I'm being extra cautious at this point, and am now basically smoking in the hallway. Nobody came up those stairs. I sat back down on the balcony and heard the same thing. Now on my 2nd cigarette, being the chain smoker I am, I go back in the hallway and again, the footsteps stop. Thinking I'm losing my mind, I go into my unit and firmly close the door behind me until I hear the lock click in place. I go about my business and sit at my desk with my back turned towards the door. The door can only be unlocked with a code. If someone enters this code, the mechanism creates a beeping sound. After about 15 minutes on my laptop, I get up to go to bed, and the door behind me that was locked was wide open, and the censored lights in the halls are all lit up. I close the door and turn on the flashlight on my phone to investigate my unit. Make sure nobody else is in there with me while my back was turned. There was nobody, and no noise indicating anyone had come to the door to open it or had gone inside. I go to bed, and I'm awakened by a smash in the halls a few hours later, around 5:30 a.m. The door is wide open again. Nothing was stolen, and there's plenty to steal. And my friend never woke up once during this entire time. I get this uneasy feeling in the halls, and the derelict staircase leads 6 stories down into only what I can call an abyss, a totally dark and damp basement that has been in disuse for 100 or so years. I am the only one who smokes, but sometimes it smells like cigarettes in or around the balcony I spend my time smoking on. What is this? And what does it want from me? This just happened to me tonight. It's my first day in 10th grade, and I'm going to graduate in 49 weeks. So it could just be hallucinations, because I'm stressing myself out. But I woke up at 3:04 a.m. on the dot and went to the bathroom to take a shower since I fell asleep before I could do so. The shower is located right next to the mirror, which I could swear I saw myself fully dressed. I looked away and thought to myself, it was probably just my imagination. When I got out and got dressed though, I looked into the mirror and definitely saw my reflection, lagging, it seemed like looking back at me a second after I did. Has this ever happened to anyone else? I'd like to start off by saying that I have always been a skeptic, and I usually try to find a logical explanation for strange events. However, a weird experience has really stuck with me, and I'm trying to search for answers. A few years ago, I was trying to fall asleep but was having trouble doing so. It was about 11:30 at the night, and everybody else in my house was in bed. Just as I was starting to doze off, a light comes on in the hallway. There were a few strange things about this light. First, the lights in my house have a warm yellow tint to them, but this light was white. It was so white that it almost looked like it had a blue tint to it. Second, it was extremely bright. Usually, if someone turns on a light outside of my room, I can see a faint glow under my door, but that's it. However, this light was so bright that it illuminated my entire bedroom. I vividly remember seeing my ceiling completely lit up by it, and I remembered that the light was so bright enough that I lifted up my covers over my face so that my eyes could adjust because I was so tired. I didn't question why the light looked so weird, but I remember feeling a strong sense of annoyance. I mentally cursed whoever was getting up in the middle of the night. Then, I heard footsteps. I heard someone from down the hallway go down the stairs and back up. After a short pause, I heard them go back down the stairs and back up. After going up the stairs a second time, the light shuts off. As a small note, normally, when I hear footsteps, I associate them with a person I know, but I did not recognize these footsteps at all. At this point, I'm still feeling pretty annoyed, but since I'm so tired, I decided to let it go and try to go back to sleep again, even though this light has completely woken me up. After about 30 minutes, I'm almost falling asleep again when the light turns back on. I hear the footsteps go down and up the stairs once, and then the light shuts off. Being disturbed again annoys me, but this time I am able to fall completely asleep afterwards and don't see or hear anything weird for the rest of the night. The next morning, I remember the light and decide to try to see who was getting up in the night. I live with my parents and sister. I asked my parents first, but both of them claimed that they never had got up and that neither of them saw anything. However, when I ask my sister about it, she looks confused. She says that it wasn't her that was getting up, but that she saw and heard the light and footsteps as well. She told me that she had thought it was me getting up, since to her it sounded like the footsteps were coming from my room. Normally, I would brush off an experience like this as a dream despite it being so vivid, but I'm hesitant, since my sister also saw the light. I would appreciate any insight or explanations for what happened. Do you think that this is paranormal in any way? I've been living in my apartment since early 2019, and I haven't experienced anything strange inside my unit until this past Saturday afternoon. Or at least I didn't think it was inside my unit until now. I was cleaning and noticed a little skeleton statue I have was turned a quarter turn clockwise and facing the wall. Its position hadn't moved, just the direction it was facing, like it rotated in place. I assumed I bumped into it and turned it the correct way. Sunday morning, I got up and was having my morning coffee in bed and texting my boyfriend, who was still away until November. I've been alone in here since May, with the exception of my son visiting every other weekend. but he wasn't over this past weekend. I had a strange feeling and turned to look at my nightstand where the statue is, and it was rotated again. A quarter turn clockwise, facing the wall. Nothing else had been disturbed, not even slightly. I definitely felt a mild anxiety wash over me. Not terror, but just unnerved. I snapped pictures, repositioned it yet again, and decided it was time to debunk it and find a logical explanation to put my mind at ease. I've recently switched my bedroom to my living room, as it's the largest room in the apartment, much quieter and rarely used. The closed bedroom is now my office and guest room for my son. I figured maybe I'm just not used to the room and I'm more on edge because of that. So I proceeded to go over possibilities and do things to prevent environmental factors from messing with the little statue. My first test was wind. Mind you, the windows were shut overnight and the bedroom and bathroom doors remained open. It shouldn't be that. Still, I proceeded to blow on the statue. Use a blow dryer on high, and it didn't produce much, except knocking it over. Next was vibration, or making the table shake. I shook the table slightly, moderately, and then intensely. It took quite a bit of force to jiggle the table enough to make it move, but it did wind up in the same position. But all of my other stuff had also moved and knocked over, so I leveled with the table with a bit of cardboard under the leg and put the statue on an empty cigarette pack, so it sunk into it, a bit like a hammock. I took videos of everything I did. I took pictures of everything in my apartment, and in the afternoon and again before bed, I woke up this morning and the statue has not moved. But I'm leaving everything as is, just out of curiosity. I'm fairly certain I've debunked it and I'm blaming an uneven table and a statue with an uneven base. But I've also had some auditorial experiences that I'm trying to rationalize away by chalking it up to my own faulty perception. Saturday night, I heard a beer bottle fall to the floor and roll in my kitchen. There were no bottles in the kitchen and nothing knocked over. The dishes were all put away. Nothing was amiss. I told myself I'm probably just hearing something through a wall and perceiving it more clearly than it actually was. Usually, sounds from neighbors are very muffled through the walls. Leading up to this, I've heard mystery knockings on my apartment door on a semi-regular basis since I moved in. I keep telling myself it's my mind playing tricks on me, but for some reason it's not sitting right with me. It'll be 3 knocks in succession after footsteps. Tap, tap, tap. I'll immediately go over and open the door and no one is there. No one is in the front of another person's door. The hallway door did not open. It's so loud. We can all hear it every time. It is impossible to open it without loud creaking and the hinges squeaking. I hear it a dozen times a day. Sometimes the knocking happens up to 3 times in a day and there is never anyone there, and the door never squeaks or creaks. The only child up here is a baby who can't walk yet, so it's not kids pranking me for 3 years in a row. I thought it was a neighbor, but how do they disappear so fast? Why can I hear their doors open and shut? Every door up here makes noise, including my own. I can hear my neighbors go in and out of their apartments, crystal clear, including the deadbolts, but with an echo because the sound in the hall echoes. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the knocking I hear doesn't have an echo, like when I hear visitors knocking on my neighbor's doors. The sound isn't being produced in the hall. I don't think. I think it's coming from inside my apartment. I have also had experiences of waking up to find my apartment door unlocked and slightly open. More than once. My door is locked all of the time, with a deadbolt. I keep telling myself I just forgot, but I lock it immediately upon entering my apartment for safety. It's not impossible that I did forget. It's just that with the knocking, the footsteps, it feels strange. I'm going to continue to take note of my experiences and keep an eye on my statue and other objects. Until then, I'm telling myself it's all just coincidences, but there's something unnerving about it anyway. I just don't feel safe. I just feel like I don't really, truly know what's actually going on, and I'm doubting my own sanity at times. My house is made out of 2 old mining cottages in northern England. They were built at some point in the 19th century. I've lived in it for 25 years, and while I am not exactly a believer in the paranormal, I cannot fully explain some of the things that have gone on inside my house. Some things are the kind of cliche haunted house occurrences that go kind of unnoticed and just become normal. No one has really felt threatened in any way. Household items regularly go missing, curtains close by themselves, doors slamming or opening by themselves, and the odd bump in the night. Nothing really unexplainable or out of the place in the first half of a cheesy haunted house movie. Occasionally, a family friend or my high school girlfriend has felt uncomfortable in the house alone and couldn't really explain why. But for my family, it was just our home. However, there have been some more unusual incidents that have, again, kind of just been accepted by my family. One evening, when I was about 23, my father went to go pick up my mother from Newcastle. Just as I was about to have a shower, I heard him leave, but about 5 minutes later, I heard footsteps coming up from the stairs that I did not recognize. They had a pace and weight to them that didn't match any of the family members. At first, I wasn't alarmed as I just assumed my father had forgotten something. I saw the shadow cross the hallway and enter my parents' room, so I called out to my father, but got no answer. At this point, I assumed my dad has left the door open and someone has broken in. I had been training in martial arts since the age of 4 and was perhaps overconfident. I also knew my dad kept a bat by his bed, so I ran into my parents' room completely naked, ready for a fight. Again, as if it was a cheesy movie, there was no one there. I was certain there was someone there. More recently, my entire family awoke to a massive crash in the middle of the night that shook the whole house awake. Dogs barking and everyone panicked. I thought there had been a car crash into our house. However, there was no sign of anything that would make a crash that loud. Nothing had fallen over. None of our neighbors had woken up. I even checked to see if there had been an earthquake or some kind of explosion nearby. But there had been nothing. There have been other things, but I just thought I would share. Please, let me know if you have any advice that can help me. This happened back at the end of December of 2021. I was working as a security guard in a big museum, which is the former castle of Augustus II of Saxony. We had it shut down because, you know the reason, and had not much work to do. Mostly, me and my co-workers had to come in because we had to look after workers who fixed the electric stuff such as lights and chandeliers. It was the perfect time because nobody else was allowed in the castle, so they could work at their own speed, which meant for us security guards that we often had to be there for 10 to 11 hours just looking after those guys, if they even showed up. Sometimes they just didn't. Because it was in the winter, it became dark very early, meaning it was sometimes kind of creepy walking all alone through the big halls of the castle. But nothing was as creepy as the stuff I experienced in the archchambers and throne room of Augustus II. Those rooms were the main attraction, covered in golden ornaments and red royal carpets on every wall, all remade by hand after most of it got destroyed back in World War II. There was this big iron door at the first of the hall, separating the chambers from the rest of the museum. I once had the shift that would walk around the west part of the second floor to close all of the doors in that evening. From the tower room to the end of the chambers, it was all going well until I stood in the second archchamber, just before the throne room, when I suddenly heard footsteps from the exact other side of the wall. There was the former guardrobe of Augustus II as well as some of its wives' dresses. The rooms originally led to the bedchamber, but were separated by a big, heavy oak door that was hard to open and was loud as fuck if you did so. Now, there were those steps. I turned around, looking into the first archchamber, but I saw nothing. The big iron door was still closed, so I went through the hall, around the corner of the guard-robe room. Maybe someone from the castle used one fire exit to look for something in the exhibition, but there was nobody in there. Even as I walked around the whole 2 rooms, looking in every corner, I found nothing at all. So I went back, was now back in the throne room, and just as I entered it, I heard those steps again. But this time, they went exactly from one of the guard-robe rooms right into the bedroom, which was separated by this big oak door. I rushed into the bedroom, looked around, and there was nobody. The big oak door was still closed. The steps had vanished. I got out, since nobody was in there, and I told this to one of my coworkers, who was waiting outside so he could finally turn on the alarm system. I even asked him if he saw someone coming out of the exhibition, but she answered with a no, but then told me that this is not the first time someone heard steps, especially in those chambers. A few other security guards encountered this exact same phenomenon. Nobody can explain what this is. Jokingly, he said, but some believe Augustus II is still just walking through his golden chambers, checking if we protect them the way he wants them to. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If your story was told, I'm glad I'm the one who could tell it. I appreciate all the love and support, and I hope you enjoyed today's stories as much as I did reading them.